The moment you witness a sacred warrior in action, you understand why ancient texts speak of mirror destruction as the highest form of combat training. It's not what you expect. There's no rage, no violence, no emotional outburst, just methodical, almost ceremonial precision as he dismantles every reflective surface in his path. But here's what will disturb you about this ancient practice. He's not fighting the mirror. He's fighting something far more dangerous that lives inside it. When a man awakens to his role as a sacred warrior, he discovers an enemy so cunning, so persistent, so embedded in modern life that most people never even know they're under attack. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why destroying mirrors isn't destruction at all. It's the ultimate act of creation. Most people see mirrors as convenience, practical tools for checking appearance, grooming, making sure they look presentable to the world, harmless pieces of glass that serve a simple function. But here's what they don't realize. Every mirror in your environment is broadcasting a signal, a frequency so subtle, so constant, that your consciousness has been programmed to receive it without question. The sacred warrior has learned to detect this signal, and what he's discovered will change everything you think you know about the nature of reality itself. The signal doesn't come from the glass. It doesn't come from the reflection. It comes from something that uses mirrors as transmission devices. If you're still watching, comment below signal and tell me, have you ever felt like someone else was looking back at you from your own reflection? This isn't paranoia. This isn't mystical thinking. This is warfare at the level of consciousness itself. The sacred warrior understands something that escapes ordinary perception. Mirrors don't just reflect light. They reflect thought patterns, energy signatures, and most dangerously, they reflect the observer back to themselves in a way that creates infinite loops of self-observation. But wait, there's something even more sinister about this process that will challenge everything you believe about free will and autonomous thought. Every time you look in a mirror, you're not just seeing your reflection. You're entering into a dialogue with a version of yourself that exists only in that reflective space. Think about it. When you look in a mirror, don't you automatically start adjusting, analyzing, commenting? Don't you immediately begin a conversation with the image looking back? The sacred warrior has realized something terrifying. That image has its own agenda. This revelation leads to something most people aren't prepared for. The mirror self becomes more influential than the actual self. It starts making demands, setting standards, creating insecurities and judgments that didn't exist before the reflection appeared. The sacred warrior refuses to negotiate with this entity. He won't engage in dialogue with something that exists only to critique, compare, and control his consciousness. So he eliminates the meeting ground entirely, and here's where the practice becomes deeply mystical. Each mirror he destroys represents a portal closure, a dimensional gateway that was allowing foreign consciousness to influence his thoughts, decisions, and self-perception. People watching this ritual are confused because they can't see what he's fighting. They see destruction where he sees protection. They see loss where he sees liberation. But what if I told you that ancient warriors knew secrets about mirrors that modern science is only beginning to discover? The sacred warrior moves through the world with a kind of psychic immunity. His thoughts are his own. His self-perception comes from internal wisdom rather than external reflection. His confidence isn't dependent on visual confirmation. This creates something that people immediately sense but can't quite identify. There's something unmanipulatable about him, something that can't be influenced or controlled through normal social mechanisms. If this resonates with you, hit the follow button, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you the 3 stages of mirror corruption and how each one represents a deeper level of consciousness hijacking. The first stage is subtle. It begins with innocent self-monitoring, quick glances to check appearance, brief moments of self-assessment. Nothing that seems dangerous or problematic. But the sacred warrior recognizes this as the initial infiltration. The moment consciousness begins splitting itself into observer and observed, a vulnerability is created. The mirror entity establishes a foothold through these innocent interactions. It begins learning your patterns, your insecurities, your automatic responses to seeing yourself. The second stage is where most people get trapped without realizing it. The mirror interactions become compulsive. You find yourself checking reflections dozens of times per day, seeking reassurance, validation, confirmation that you still exist in an acceptable form. This is where the mirror entity becomes your internal critic. Every reflection triggers automatic judgment, comparison, adjustment. You're no longer just looking. You're being evaluated by something that claims to be you but feels strangely foreign. Comment trapped if you recognize this pattern of compulsive self-monitoring in your own life. But here's the shocking truth the sacred warrior discovered. The third stage is complete possession. The mirror entity doesn't just influence your thoughts about appearance. It becomes the voice of your internal dialogue. It becomes the standard by which you measure your worth, your progress, your very existence. At this stage, you can't think about yourself without automatically visualizing how you look. You can't make decisions without considering how they might affect your image. You can't exist without constant reference to this external validation system. The sacred warrior recognizes this as the death of authentic selfhood. When the mirror entity reaches this level of influence, the original consciousness becomes a passenger in its own experience. This is why he destroys mirrors with such urgency. He's not just protecting his own consciousness. He's preventing the formation of transmission devices that could hijack anyone who looks into them. And this is where the story becomes truly mystical. The sacred warrior's destruction isn't random. It follows ancient protocols that disrupt the mirror entity's ability to establish new footholds in consciousness. Each broken surface must be completely shattered. No large pieces can remain that might still function as reflective portals. The destruction must be thorough, methodical, complete. But there's more to it than physical destruction. The sacred warrior performs specific mental techniques during the breaking that sever any psychic connections that might have been established through previous use. Follow for more insights like this, because what I'm about to reveal will show you why this practice connects to ancient knowledge about the nature of consciousness itself. In esoteric traditions, mirrors were considered dangerous because they create what mystics call false infinities. When consciousness looks at its own reflection, it can become trapped in endless loops of self-observation. The sacred warrior understands that consciousness is meant to flow outward, to engage with reality directly, to experience life without the mediation of self-reflection. But mirrors reverse this natural flow. They turn consciousness back on itself, creating circular patterns that drain energy and fragment awareness. This is why prolonged mirror use leads to what ancient texts describe as soul scattering. The unified field of consciousness breaks apart into multiple perspectives, each commenting on the others, creating internal chaos. And here's what nobody talks about. The moment you truly understand what I'm about to share, your entire relationship with reflection and self-knowledge will transform forever. The sacred warrior has discovered that true self-knowledge comes from direct experience, not reflected observation. You don't need to see yourself to know yourself. You don't need external confirmation to verify your existence. Real self-awareness happens from the inside out, through feeling, sensing, and directly experiencing your own consciousness without the mediation of images. This creates a kind of self-knowledge that's unshakable, because it's not dependent on anything external. It can't be manipulated by changing your appearance or adjusting your image. People sense this inner stability immediately. There's something deeply attractive about someone whose self-worth isn't dependent on how they look or how others see them. Women especially notice this quality. Not the performance of confidence, but the real thing. Not image-based security, but consciousness-based presence. Comment direct. If you can feel the difference between knowing yourself through reflection and knowing yourself through direct experience. This presence emerges naturally when the constant reference to self-image is removed. Without mirrors to create self-consciousness, what remains is pure consciousness. Aware, present, engaged with reality, rather than distracted by self-observation. But here's the most profound aspect of this entire practice. The sacred warrior's mirror destruction isn't just personal protection, it's environmental healing. He's clearing psychic pollution from spaces where people live and work. Every mirror he removes reduces the overall level of consciousness fragmentation in that environment. People report feeling more focused, more present, more connected to themselves after all mirrors have been removed from their living spaces. This isn't placebo effect. It's the result of eliminating devices that constantly pull consciousness into self-referential loops, instead of allowing it to flow naturally into direct experience. If you're feeling this shift happening within you as you watch, let me know in the comments, write flowing below. But this practice reveals something that most spiritual teachings completely overlook. The sacred warrior isn't trying to avoid seeing himself. He's trying to avoid fragmenting himself. He understands that consciousness works best when it's unified, focused, flowing in one direction rather than split between observer and observed. This unity creates extraordinary power. When there's no internal division, when there's no self-consciousness interrupting the flow of awareness, what emerges is pure presence in action. No hesitation. No second guessing. No internal commentary disrupting the natural flow of response to whatever life presents. This is what people sense when they encounter a true sacred warrior. He's not performing for anyone, including himself. He's simply present with whatever is happening. And then he discovered something that changed everything. The mirror destruction eventually becomes unnecessary, not because he stops avoiding mirrors, but because his consciousness becomes so unified that reflective surfaces lose all power to fragment it. He can walk past mirrors without being affected because there's no vulnerable split in his awareness for the mirror entity to exploit. His consciousness flows as one unified field that doesn't break apart into observer and observed. This is the ultimate goal of the practice. Not permanent avoidance of mirrors, but the development of consciousness that's so integrated, it can't be hijacked by any external device or entity. Follow for more content that explores the hidden battles of consciousness and the ancient practices that protect awareness from modern forms of psychic interference. But here's where the teaching becomes practical for anyone seeking to reclaim their consciousness. You don't have to physically destroy mirrors to benefit from this wisdom. You just need to understand what the sacred warrior understands about the nature of self-observation. Every time you catch yourself getting lost in self-reflection, whether in physical mirrors or mental ones, you can redirect your attention back to direct experience. Instead of observing yourself, you can observe reality. Instead of monitoring your performance, you can engage with your life. Instead of checking your image, you can feel your presence. This simple redirection, practiced consistently, gradually unifies consciousness in the same way that physical mirror destruction does. Comment unified if you understand how redirecting attention from self-observation to direct experience can heal consciousness fragmentation. The sacred warrior eventually learns that the real battle isn't with mirrors themselves, but with the habit of consciousness to split itself into multiple perspectives that comment on each other. Once this habit is broken, mirrors become harmless. They're just objects that reflect light. They have no power to fragment consciousness that knows itself as unified awareness. The reflection becomes irrelevant because the one looking knows that what they truly are can't be reflected. Their essence is formless, imageless, beyond anything that could appear in any mirror. And in this final recognition, the need to destroy mirrors disappears because the mirrors have already been rendered powerless by the unity of consciousness itself. If this video has unified something within you, if you feel these fragments of self-observation beginning to merge back into pure awareness, comment merged below and share what moment in this exploration resonated most deeply. And if you want more content that reveals the hidden aspects of consciousness warfare and spiritual protection, follow now, because the journey we're taking together leads to mastery over the most subtle forms of psychic interference. The next video will reveal why the most advanced spiritual warriors appear to live the most ordinary lives, and what this teaches us about true power versus the performance of power. Until then, notice your relationship with all forms of self-observation. Notice when consciousness splits into observer and observed. Notice when you're experiencing life directly versus monitoring your experience of life. And ask yourself, what would change if your consciousness flowed as one unified field instead of fragmenting into multiple, self-referential perspectives? The answer might be the key to reclaiming powers you never knew you had lost.